Hey everybody, welcome back to Trekyards. I am Captain Foley.
I am Commander Cockins, your pilot for this week.
So buckle up everyone, because chances are we're gonna crash. That being said, we're looking at a very cool ship from the Stargate universe today. One that I'm pretty familiar with, actually, before you even ask.
Well, what's
So
it
there
called
you
then,
go.
Stuart?
I don't know. It's the X-302. I'm just kidding. So we're going to be looking at the X-302 today, and yeah, maybe I'll learn a few things, because I'm not brushed up on my Stargate, which I should be, and I apologize, guys.
But give us, so we know, Stuart, the fans know, what is your history of Stargate? How do you say?
Well, Sylvia's a huge fan of it. She wanted me to sit down and watch it with her. I watched a few episodes with her, and then I was away, and she started watching it, and I didn't want to keep watching because I wasn't up to date. So I've seen a few episodes here and there, usually the same episode for some reason. It's one of those weird anomalies. Some of them are really fantastic. Other ones are kind of like, eh. I do like the characters and the realistic kind of tech from the show, and this is a good example of that. So, I mean, yeah, I need to watch more Stargate.
But maybe for this channel later on. We've done a couple of Stargate lives and you guys loved them, so hey ho. But this is a little bit further along in the Stargate timeline. We had the X-301, it went horribly wrong. They just tried to steal some tech, they made a joke, stick an American flag on it and call it ours. This one is actually a scratch-built fighter, and I always say this about Stargate, no other show, I don't think no other show, takes the progression of tech. It feels so considered and deliberate, but I mean they're doing each season at a time. Although I guess they had 3 seasons. They were so popular, they had 3 season batches of being ordered. So three, and then it was one at a time. But this is season 6, and we have this fighter, and it's our first time having a fully human built. And they say it can do FTL, that goes wrong, but it's still a plot point. But it can't do FTL. And then we get a bigger ship, and an even bigger ship, and then it evolves beautifully. And as you watch the show, it's like, well, yeah. Why wouldn't we have tech by now? We've been doing this for 6 years. We've found this tech. This is our very first fighter. Now, as you guys know, there was the Stargate magazines released, the DVD with magazine. And while a great set of information on some things, they also just made up a ton of stuff, which is why Ilgamos is kind of good. Yes, their pages might be very limiting on how much information on the ship they have, but they don't make stuff up. It's all it. So for most ships, they made stuff up. For all the ships, they used original renders of their own models they made scratch, which were lower detail and not always the right dimensions and that sort of stuff. This is the original 3D model from the show, then Fiction Atlantis, then in Universe. This is the definitive 3D model as seen. Therefore, it comes with the original scale data and the correct proportions, la. So do keep that into account. If you look at the official scale magazine, it records it as being rather small, and people associate, it's a fighter, it's small. But if you look at that cockpit, it's a very small proportion of the entire fighter, and that's a 2-person cockpit. Look how much is behind that person. Look at the wingspan is easily, 10 times the cockpit length? Hands down. This is an absolutely giant fighter, and people always forget, even though it is absolutely giant, and therefore this makes the larger battle cruisers giant, because guess what? It has 10 to 20 of these. And I want to just disclaim that now, because some people might say, the scale's wrong. But really look at it. It's easy to understand this one. But Stuart, first reaction to the design, or what would you say now, looking at in a high detail 1080p, no motion blur shot?
It looks like the dropship from Aliens and a Cylon Raider had a baby.
Okay. Okay.
Or the Raptor, I guess, from Battlestar Galactica, the new one. It's got that weird kind of, I think it's the Raptor, the bulky kind of cockpit. You can definitely see U.S. military design aesthetics here at work. It's kind of got like an Apache helicopter-styled cockpit as well. So, I mean, I am a big fan of modern-day jet fighters, so I do know quite a bit about that. So it'll be easy to translate into this, I think. But it definitely has a Cylon feel to me.
Yeah, I would say it doesn't look advanced. I think you could build this today.
Yes, probably. Yeah.
Which I love. It's just an evolution of what we could do rather than this far-flung whatever. And I'm going to get into that in a moment. But I think it's a great design. I think it's relatively nice looking. It looks functional. It's simplistic, but not too simplistic. The details are good. It's bulky, but sleek in the right places. I'm going to take to the next picture, which is the very first time we see it.
Being built.
Being finished, yes. Now, how big does that feel from that picture?
This seems a lot smaller than what we just saw.
You think?
In my opinion, yeah, it does.
Oh, really? Even though
especially the guy on the ladder that's closer to us. The guy in the by the cockpit at the back there makes it feel a little bit bigger for sure. I'd love to see this scaled to like modern day or even past fighter jets, like an F-14 or something, because I know the F-14 very well. So I'd like to see it scaled to that. But I mean, it looks cool. I was wondering about the landing gear. They're very, very long and spindly because of the downward slope of those wings. But I mean, I don't know how practical that would be necessarily. But
next picture, though, you can see is the cockpit, 2-person, lots of lights, and again, this mostly pictured in SD because most of the time it was an SD. I'm just showing its first appearance. But you can see, nice big US Air Force classic cockpit. But now that you've got sort of, maybe you said maybe it was smaller. Let's talk about scale. Actually, what you think it is. I've got comparative things of the Millennium Falcon and the Viper Mark II. How big would you say compared to those?
Well, based on the cockpit, I mean, a little bit longer than the Viper Mark II, but the wingspan is quite big. So, but let's go to the scale chart and see.
There you go.
I don't want to look like an idiot. All right, cool.
And obviously, that's the original. It's an original pole jumper. It's a longer distance version. The original Stargate models, BSG, and that's the Battlefront 2 licensed Millennium Falcon.
It's quite a bit bigger than the Death Glider, which I didn't expect. I expected those to be about the same, just from first glance.
But if you look at the cockpit, though, it matches up completely because the Death Glider doesn't need engines. It's got a special propulsion type, but you add the engines.
Yeah, I like the width being comparable to the Falcon. That's kind of cool. I would not have expected that necessarily. But yeah, a little bit longer than the Viper Mark II, like I said.
You're close. You're very close on that, yeah.
I don't know how maneuverable it would be. I mean, it's advanced tech, I guess, but it just seems kind of unwieldy a little bit with that size. But then again, I mean, like I said, the F-14 is pretty big too, so.
I mean, it can bank relatively. I mean, it's in space, Death Glider, I think it's meant to be more maneuverable than Death Glider, but more in the sense of it can build up momentum more. Like I think it's meant to have like a quicker, it can boost to a quicker short-term speed. But I think Death Glider is more maneuverable mostly, but this has like big sweeping turns and it can do. Pearl Jumper's more maneuverable, that's because it's very advanced, and obviously the as we always say, it's amazing how small the BSG Viper is.
Yeah,
so much good stuff packed in a very small bundle. Side view though, that makes it feel smaller to me.
Yeah. Again, it carries over that Cylon look.
Yeah.
Sorry, just has a Cylon Raider feel. But yeah, it does seem a lot smaller from the side, especially when compared to the Falcon. But again, you can see the little helmet in there. You can see his little helmet. So you can see the scale of the person in there, and you compare that to the Falcon. And yeah, it's perfect. That's great.
And it's fun that actually the engines, if you assume they go as far front as the bulky detail on the Viper, the engines are mostly the same size. There's just a lot of other stuff needed. It's actually not as far off as you'd think, which is interesting. But yeah, it's a lot of just stuff needed to make it fly. I mean, it was modern day. It was made in like 2006. What do you want from us back then? It could go to space.
It wasn't that long ago. They were developing like the F-35 and stuff back then. They were starting that development process. Jets are in development for quite a long time before they get, unprototyped and released. So
I mean, the wing's very thin considering what it can do. I mean, it was built to go to hyperspace. The stress on hyperspace all built in as part of it. But next picture though, this speaks to how it's used later on after we get past the battleship mentality where we have intergalactic spaceships. Now this is again when people complain at me about the X-304 sizing, but look at the X-304 scale of the internal hangar deck as seen in its second episode. The second episode we see it in, it shows us this scale shot, and as you can see, we know how big the fighters are. This is a massive hangar, but with wingspan that massive, I mean, it's got to move out and then like have space, so you need a lot of physical space. What do you think?
It's fine. It's how you would stack up jets, really. Although I'm going to compare it to modern day aircraft. That's what I know the best. The F-14, because of the size restrictions on aircraft carriers to fit as many in as you can, there's 3 wing configurations. There's 2 for flight, and there's 1 for storage, where the wings actually tuck in a lot farther. The F-18s, the wing tips fold up so that you can put more side by side, right? I would have assumed this had something like that, but I don't see anything like that here. So yeah, you would need quite a large hangar bay to accommodate these, and I like the way they're stacked. You can see the elevators there on the floor, which it probably takes them down to lower storage, much like an aircraft carrier. So I love the real world parallels here. I think it's great.
Yeah, and I like the idea of the wingtips. Though I think because this is designed for such strenuous, I mean, it more than those fighters, it needs to have raw, very durable wings. Any movement point is a weak point, possible weak point. But yeah, that's massive hangars. Next picture, here is it leaving the bay, and you can see that the door is ample big, but again, it looks small compared to the battle cruiser. So guys, big battle cruiser, believe us, go back and watch our episode. That is as big as it really is. And I think they have about 10 in each bay. I think that's roughly what they have. Next picture, though, you can see, and we looked at this in our previous X-302 episode, this is its last appearance, the X-302, when they swapped out the side 2 pods, which used to be hyperspace, now into fighter bays, and you can see that it has ample room. They didn't scale it quite right, they upped it a little bit, but it's certainly closer. It's hard to see with the motion blur, so I did my own custom render. Next picture, this is how big it actually is.
That's cool.
They did mess up the scale a little bit, but since from season 6 to 9, which was his entire lifespan, from first appearance to last appearance, this was his last appearance, only one time, the side pods were just hyperspace. There was no hangars. They weren't designed to be that scaled. If you look at the middle, you can see why I've put an X-302 there, because that little bay is a little ramp thing. That's the original launch bay. And you can fit the fighters in there. Not with any massive amount of space, but, I mean, you can be careful. Like, it's not as if they're big runways of launching. I mean, you just need to get up there, get out, launch. I mean, you know, we never see it do it once in the show, but there are concept sketches, and that is the hangar, and it launches, and that entire middle section is a hangar to fit, I think, about 10. But you can see the scale's about right, and you can fit him in just fine.
Looks good. I really like that render, actually.
Thank you. Next bit, back to the actual design, and here's some back details, what the actual details are. So, what do you think?
Again, I love the huge is that the hyperdrive engine in the middle?
No.
Because it looks like it's just a regular, like, jet engine with an afterburner type deal. And the smaller ones remind me a lot of the F-18's engines. So
no, the hyperdrive is completely internal. It doesn't need emitters to be this small. It could just activate, 'cause it creates a window, so there's not like it doesn't need thrust. It's not that sort of device. So yeah, the 2 side ones are the average everyday thrust, and the middle one, as I say, is an afterburner. Although we never really see it get used after its initial inception, and guess why it was initially incepted? Because it needed it for the plot. So that it was in the script, activate afterburner, and it was never used again, but it stayed in the model. But yeah, that's the extra bit of thrust.
Next picture, though, is the bottom, and I like this because, again, the modern day aircraft, you get the white or the yellow and black markings for the caution areas. You got missiles strapped to the bottom of it, and physical hardware on the outside instead of being all futuristic and sleek. You can see the tie-in with like the modern tech, and I think this is absolutely a great shot. I didn't know that they carried missiles like that, but that's very neat.
And I'll be honest, I've had this model for a long time, as you might have guessed on Trekyards. I've never looked at the bottom. So I rendered this, was like, that's what the bottom looks like. That's so cool. It's got pipes and shit. The fact that the engines have to have lower detail, which is visible, and like that's interesting. But I mean, yeah, you need heat exhaust. You need to be able to be repaired. I mean, that can't be the weakest spot in a dogfight. I mean, the hull can get destroyed by any weapon. That's not a weak spot. It can't be. Everything. The hull's not strong enough.
And I'm wondering, are those kind of longer shaped sections there? Are those the landing gear where they fold down? There's the oval parts that are highlighted by the caution stuff, the yellow and black.
I think so, yeah.
Because I guess that would make the most sense for them to go up that way instead of up forward and back. That would be the most. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, which would actually, yeah, it's subtle, but I think that makes sense. Yeah, and it's not. It does actually have machine guns. I forgot that until I recently watched an episode. I'm guessing that's what those two. Well, there are kind of pipes at the top. It has got machine guns somewhere, but that wasn't used until way later. I mean, it doesn't make sense to only have 4 missiles, maybe 8, but there isn't that many attachment points.
Yeah.
Battles don't last long, but also machine guns aren't overly useful against,
Well, you say that, but here's a little story. In Vietnam, when they designed the F-4 Phantom, they didn't think they needed guns on them because they had Sidewinder missiles, they had heat-seeking missiles, they had more advanced tech that they had learned from previous wars. So they didn't put guns on the F-4. They will never get close enough to the enemy to need guns in a dogfight. Turns out they did. So they needed to add external pods for the guns for the F-4, and then the later versions had it. And all fighter jets since then have also had a Gatling gun for that reason, because sometimes you either run out of missiles or you do get really close encounter with an enemy and you need to use those guns. So, yeah, that was a actual mistake they did when designing the F-4 Phantom. They didn't think they would need guns, and that's just not the case. So,
yeah, fast-firing, efficient bullet. I mean, all BSG uses explosive rounds, simple shells. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So that's one of the things where they added on later. They didn't quite add it to the model, but yeah, it has missiles. If you have the front view, you can see. I love this view. You can see the intakes, which are not really visible at any other view, and the missiles, and I think there's a really nice vibe to it.
The front view is great. Again, Cylon Raider. Or Scimitar.
Awesome. Well, yeah. And since you mentioned it before, here's a view from a previous episode on the Death Glider. Here is them in direct comparison. Yeah, much bigger. We got some backlash against that, but I think it's pretty blatant, the 2 cockpit arrangement. I mean, it shouldn't be rocket science to see the logistical realities of this, And then the next shot is they did try and do FTL, didn't work. And they never tried it again. That would have been, I think, too much to have a little fight to have FTL. But they tried. They were ballsy. In the episode, they were saying, we'll have the smallest hyperdrive known to any Gould or human race alike. And it's like, you really think we could design something that efficient at our level? Nah, son. Nah. And it didn't work. Well, it did work, but it didn't work. You'll watch it eventually. And then last picture, final picture. There you go. The visual history of the X-302, the brand new renders and scale shots. What do you think of my favourite Stargate human fighter?
Well, since it's your favorite, I have to say it's really awesome, and I think it's great.
So they all got people killed, so it's fine.
Okay.
People killed. That's a joke.
No, I think it's great. I do like again, it looks like something that could even fit in the early days of Battlestar Galactica. I keep drawing the Cylon parallel, but also looking at the early Vipers, the Pierre Joulet's, early Air Force version of the Viper that looks like an F-18. This fits right in with that fleet, in my opinion. So it's a great example of modern day fighter technology, but using some advanced alien designs to. Yeah, I think it's fantastic.
And I think BSG wouldn't fit as a Viper variant, more as a bomber variant. But having those big wings and being able to pack on those missiles, if they just packed the wings with 10, 20 missiles, which Vipers can't do, I think that would certainly fit better. But yeah, glad you like it. Obviously Stargate, is a very treasured franchise for me, and we're very, very proud to have all these 3D assets. Although we're kind of running to end of the assets, we've used a few over the years, but we've enjoyed showing you them and the scale stuff, and hopefully we'll do full episodes at some point on these ships and do even more cool things. And do go check out our other Stargate themed episodes on the Aurora, on the X-303, the X-304. Lots of fun stuff there. And if you want to support this channel, of course, you can subscribe to see more things. We do mostly Trek, but we do other things like Star Wars, Stargate, all the fun stuff there. And do hit that bell notification to see things. Even though YouTube doesn't necessarily tell you anything, we still release stuff every Saturday at 5 p.m. GMT. It comes out like clockwork. We're very careful. Almost 5 years, or 5 years, or post 5 years, depending on when you're watching this. We've done it every week for 5 years. Very proud of that. And how else can people support Stuart?
Well, one of the easiest ways that you didn't mention is if you see a little symbol like this down there, click it. It's a like button. But in the description, we have a bunch of ways you can help us out. We have our merchandise, our Teespring store. You can click that link. Ways to save money on Eagle Moss models, you know. Plus, we have our Patreon, which is a monthly subscription service that really helps us out. That's the main backbone of what we do and very important. So if you can support us with a couple dollars a month, it's greatly appreciated. Also, we have our lives, which we do every week. We usually do like 3 a week, sometimes more, sometimes less, depending. But breaking news on Star Trek, science fiction, just ship talk, episode reviews, lots of great stuff, and it's a great way to be part of the community. Super chats are a great way to help us out as well during those lives. Head over to www.trekyards.com and click the donate button. There's also information down below in the description for our PayPal should you want to send us some money that way. So that's all of the great ways to help us out. And of course, just watch the videos and share them around. Yeah. Well, I beat you to it. So there.
Just join in and there you go.
So until next time, guys, I'm Captain Foley.
I'm Connor Combs. Bye, guys.